Welcome back again to Cast a Commotion. This is the podcast where we talk about everything flesh and blood. In this episode, I wanted to go over kind of an end-of-year special. We are on the 29th. This is going to be the last episode, granted. I didn't even get a first one out for December from all the running around and all the busy stuff. The reason for that being, man, whether or not you celebrate the holidays, this is a busy time of year. And not a lot of flesh and blood got played in my local community. We still had a little bit of people showing up here and there, but it just wasn't as much as it normally is. So we got to talking about how do we get new players into the game when everybody's back, right? We have taught multiple people. I want to say I've taught 5. I've invited a couple, and they're just intimidated by the game. They say, well, it's expensive. Well, that myth should far be gone by now, because unless you're playing top-level competitive decks, you're realistically only going to be seeing, like a $200 deck? That's really not a lot of money considering this is an evergreen format. And that's first and foremost what I'm going to go over is just how easy it is to get into Flesh and Blood. Where we are as a game, this might be a little bit longer of an episode. I hope not the longest, but I definitely want to explore that space. So, I know it's kind of late in the season of this podcast, but this time on Cast a Commotion, the hero's journey. So, in this episode of Cast a Commotion, I wanted to go over a few bullet points that I put down here because they're talking points that me and my MLM have come up with. Right? It's my local meta. It's you've shown an interest into the game, but how do you really get into it? I have a previous episode covering on how to get into Flesh and Blood. That would be the blitz decks, getting down to your local shop and just talking to people. That can still be kind of intimidating, but that's realistically what it's going to take nowadays is you have to be a little bit courageous and just get down to the game shop and talk and play. You can obviously get your friends around together, but you kind of want to think of Flesh and Blood as a steel on steel. You need to sharpen each other and sharpen yourself against the game, not just a casual play group, because Flesh and Blood does cater to the more competitive crowd. It does cater to the more competitive crowd. What else can I say about that? There are casual elements to the game, and I will recommend one of those as a way to jump into the game, but realistically, you should not be doing just the casual part of the game if you're jumping into the Flesh and Blood at this point in time. You can have fun games, and you're going to have fun games. You just got to play the game. So, let's go ahead and review what I said in the past. I previously said you just need to get down to your local game shop and get at it. Get a blitz deck, get going. I have since changed my opinion for one reason. One of my mods to my Discord has been pointing out people have been talking about how they keep buying banned heroes like Viscerai and Chain. And it's true. That's 100% true. You should not have to look at a banned suspended list. Suspension got nixed. Banned and restricted list. You should not have to look at a banned and restricted list to start the game. And it's unfortunate that some players are running into this wall where they finally see Chain or Viscerai and go, holy shit, this hero is for me. This is just my vibe. Runeblades are my vibe. Only to realize that they're gone. Same with Oldhim, Lexi, and Briar, right? There's some products that are still out there in an evergreen format. And for newer players to this game, evergreen means we don't rotate sets like Pokemon, Magic, and all these other games do. We have everything that's legal is legal, and the only thing that's not is what's on the banned restricted list or those who are living legends, which means they've won too much and are no longer with us. So how do you avoid stumbling into your hero's journey 30 seconds into it, right after you've made your first purchase? Well, I am no longer recommending blitz decks as the starting point to your journey. I'm just not recommending that as your new stepping stones. If you're going to be going into the blitz format, I would almost just suggest going for Commoner. It's the cheapest way to get into the game. There's no banned restricted list really for that yet, except for a few cards, but for you and your friends, you don't need to worry about that. And if at all, you had any questions, people can start to help an easy win at your local shop. Not a lot of people play Commoner in my area, but I'm sure it's much more popular everywhere else. The more important way I want people to get into Flesh and Blood now, as I'm fiddling with the packs in front of me, is Draft and Sealed. Draft is an advanced format for most other games, right? You have to keep up with the local meta, you have to keep up with what's hot right now, etc. But with Flesh and Blood, because it's an evergreen format, you can go back to previous sets, you can go back to current sets, whatever, and you can play the game without a banned and restricted list. Just a few cards that you can't use in the pack, right? And those are the token slot cards. So, how is this more friendly? I believe Draft is more friendly in Flesh and Blood because it exposes you to more cards. You can just look at them and see what cards you're vibing with. You can aim for a certain hero that you like the look of out of your packs, so it kind of narrows down your search. That way you're not so overwhelmed by all of the choice. You're not looking at a League of Legends-sized roster. You're not looking at a Rainbow Six Siege page of heroes and characters. You're just looking at what's in front of you, okay? So it narrows down your scope, first of all. That is first and foremost the most important thing. Second off, it just lets you, like, it really lets you experience the game in the purest sense. You're opening packs, you're seeing cards, and then you're going to play some games. Obviously, if it's like an armory draft or just something at your local area, not a big one, ask people to help you. Ask them, hey, what does this do? What does this do? It may slow down the draft a little, but people are just going to be happy to be playing the game. If randos showed up to my local game store constantly and just wanted a draft and wanted help with it and wanted to learn, I'd be ecstatic to teach them. Along with everyone else, we have a very helpful community, all available just at my Discord. Just jump in, get in there. Here's the plug for the Patreon, the Crash Command Game Store, all that. Just get in here and just start cracking packs and playing. Right. I just wanted to start this episode off with the hero's journey of avoid blitz decks for right now. They're really cool, but they haven't really included them in the past couple sets. And I think for good reason. They're just no longer a good jumping off point. They haven't said that, but I can feel what they're doing and I can see what they're doing.
I have special eyes.
And I think draft is going to be the way to go. That's why this whole next season of the next set, Heavy Hitters, the one that we're going to be going over, is entirely based on limited, right? The whole event for Heavy Hitters is going to be entirely on the limited format. So I wanted to go over a quick primer on how to draft real quick right here. Okay. So you're going to get 3 of these packs at the beginning of a draft. They'll usually cost like $15. That's an easy jumping in point. You don't have to buy a $200, $300 classic constructed deck, right? You just pick up a few packs, go down and hang out, have a good time with your friends, and you're off to the races. You're there. But then the question comes, well, draft is kind of complicated for new players. My partner, my wife, pointed this out to me.
I about 15% expected you to say my wife.
The first time I drafted, I hated it because I didn't understand what I was doing. And I have to agree with that. Right? Regardless of the fact that I believe this is the easiest game to draft in, you still have to know how. So, I'm going to go over exactly how to do that right now. What you do is you get your 3 packs. You're just going to take one of them and open it. Okay? And after you're done opening it, you're just going to go ahead and look at it and kind of go through it, find out what's good, find out what you got. You're going to remove the last 2 cards in your pack. All right? You're going to remove the last 2 cards in the pack, and those are tokens or cold foils or the collectible cards. You don't need those, okay? Those just get moved off to the side. Then you're going to go ahead and take a look at your pack and take stock of what you have. I personally put all the generics to the side, as I'm doing right now. You put all the generics to a side. You just hold on to those for a second. And then you're going to look at all the classes that are available in that set. For this booster pack that I'm opening right now, and you're just going to have to follow along with me here in your head, right? It's Outsiders, okay? So in Outsiders, you have Ranger, Assassin, Ninja, and a combination of the sort, all right? So take stock of what's there. We'll say in this pack, first off, right off the bat, ignore the foil for now. I have 3 Assassin cards, 3 Ninja cards, and 1 Ranger card. Okay. So we now know that these packs typically are going to contain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 class cards. Okay. The less of a class you see in a pack, the more likely it is someone next to you is going that class. It is now your objective to avoid taking those cards so you don't get starved out of resources. From then on, that's really the number one tip on how to avoid getting wrecked out on draft, right? That is the number one tip to not getting wrecked out on draft. Okay, if you start to try to fight someone for a class, you're both going to start losing out on resources. You're both not going to be able to reach your hero's full potential. Okay? That's really what that means. And if you're not reaching your full potential in a draft, you may not have the most fun. So, once you look at all your cards, you're really just going to pick the strongest of them, and until you play the game more, you're not going to really understand what that means. So to begin with, I always suggest staying in the generic slot. Okay? In this game, unlike Magic and all these others, you don't have to pick a color right away. You can just pick generic cards. Generic cards are often very good, right? Like, so in this example, I'm just going to pick a generic rare or maybe like a generic pump spell, right? Every game has pump spells. Everybody knows what a pump spell is. This one has a pump spell called Come to Fight. I'm just going to take that, right? I could lock myself into a class early, but there's no really good cards in this pack. If you're able to follow along in your head and you know the set of outsiders, I've got a Sedate, an Isolate, Surging Strike blue, Sneak Attack blue. You know, nothing too crazy. If you're collecting foils, right, this pack is so bad that you might as well just pick up the foil. Because the foil's different information. Or you could take an equipment card, right? This one happens to be Assassin and Ranger, so that doesn't lock me into a class, but it gets it out of someone else's hands and gives me something else, okay? So then we're just going to pass that on and open another pack, right? We're just taking a look at pack one, pick ones to get people used to what drafting is. So, in your head, when you're opening a pack, just remember, remove the last two, and then sort the generics away. Once you have the generics sorted away, look at the class cards. Again, Assassin, quadruple Assassin cards. 2 ninjas, 2 rangers, and then another equipment that's dual classed, right? Just separate it out and say, hey, what do I see a lot of? Okay. On the second pack, you're going to be missing a card, and just say, hey, am I missing a ninja card? Does it look like there's no ninja? Does it look like there's no assassin? Does it look like there's no ranger? Pick the opposite of what you just pick what you see, right? It's that simple. That's as quick as it needs to be to get in a draft. Obviously, you're going to mess it up the first 20 times you do this. But while you're doing this, you're amassing a collection. You're understanding the game. You're understanding the class, the heroes. You're seeing more of the cards, what they do, the weapons, all that kind of stuff. You are seeing all of that kind of stuff, okay? So that is 100% the only exercise I want you to do. Even if all you do is bring cards home, you go to your local game store and you just pick up some packs, practice drafting with them. Open them up, take a quick peek, okay? Remove the back 2 counters immediately, the 2 tokens, and then just take a quick stock of specifically how many generics are there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generics, 6 generics, and then individualize what classes you have. All right? Once you figure out and take stock of what's there. NANI? I have a lot of generics. I have a lot of assassin cards. Maybe the opponent's not going assassin. Start picking up those assassin cards, okay? Start picking up those assassin cards right away, because that means no one else is going to be competing for you, at least to your left or to your right. After pack 2 and pack 3, you'll know more. But draft is all about getting that information, right? It's about getting that information, seeing where you stand, right? So cards to be looking out for can be scouted by looking online, talking to your local community, getting on a Discord, and saying, hey, what's coming out in the set and what should I be looking out for in draft? What should I be looking out for in limited? The best part about this is the entire time you're drafting is you're not just looking at a hero, you're playing them. You're playing the heroes and getting an understanding of how they work. You're finding out combos. You're finding out all this other weird stuff, right? All of this stuff is going to come to you in draft and sealed. Sealed, I think, is a little bit more useful for... And I guess I should maybe note here that this is going to be more of a look at sealed than it is draft, but you can still kind of look at picks through this. Draft is more of a skill that I think is necessary to win higher level events and lower level events. But my favorite part about draft overall is that it scales with you, right? The better you get at this game, the better you get at draft, the more you're going to see it at top end events and the more you're going to compete at top level events. Obviously, Classic Constructed scales, but I think it has a ceiling, a pretty easy to reach ceiling. It's you buy whatever the meta deck is. You don't have to think a whole lot and you get going. But draft teaches you to deck build. So I kind of wanted to take a look at a second set, Bright Lights, because it is a full Mechanologist set. And sets like this are pretty exciting to people who like Mechanologist, but if you struggle against Mechanologist, they're equally as important. Because now you get to feel the inner workings of the Mechanologist and really play it out. So you can't separate this out into classes, right? But you do the same thing. You just get rid of the 2 tokens. And then what you're going to do is you're going to start looking for key abilities. Bright Lights will teach you to look for key abilities, right? So we have all of our boost cards. Just our generic boost cards. You have some crank cards, equipment, and galvanize. Okay. So we'll look at crank, galvanize. If you followed the last episode, you can be Chrome. You know what these do, but I'll go over them really quickly once I separate them out. Right? We'll put this with galvanize. Scrap is another ability. Boost and galvanize. So what you're looking for with key abilities is just who fits these. To find that out, you just look at your heroes. I see the keyword crank on Max Nitro. That's probably a good indicator that crank and boost go with him. Boost goes with every Mechanologist, but crank and boost for Max Nitro. Then you see Dash Database. She says she works with items a lot. She probably also works with crank, but because she tries to put items into play because of her hero ability, galvanize, right? Galvanize is a good way to go with her. Everything else, the scrap, by process of elimination of there only being 3 heroes in this set, scrap must go to Teklavison, right? You just got to use your process of elimination, build a logic train, and stick to it, right? So as we open up this second pack, like I said, we're going to take out those 2 back tokens, and then we're just going to go, my generic boost go in one pile, my items with crank go in another, my scrap go in another, and then my galvanize will go with another, right? So generic boost. Ooh, smash and grab. That's pretty good. Boost, galvanize, scrap. All right. So as you can see here, well, I guess you can't see it if you're in the podcast, but I'm going to tell you right now, my boost pile is huge. That's because, like I said, Mechanologists all like to boost. But my galvanize and my scrap pile are growing. So it looks like Max Nitro is falling out of favor. I'm using my logic train of saying, hey, I looked at the tokens. Okay. Dash likes items that come into play that I can galvanize. Max likes items that come into play via boosting and cranking. And wherever the hell Teklavison is, he likes to just boost and then build a board with his equipment. Okay. This is obviously just a look into 2 sets. Every set has its own things that you're going to have to look out for. There he is, Teklavison. You can play Evos from your Banish Zone, etc. So then we just take a quick look here. We go over our boosts. Generic boosts, equipment, scrap, crank, galvanize, Evo, crank, Evo, galvanize, and crank. Okay. So once you have your pack separated out amongst their abilities or their classes or whatever, just learn how to compartmentalize those cards. After you learn how to compartmentalize those cards, your drafting and your sealed experience will become so much better. They will become so much better. That's like a very, very quick and dirty primer into getting into draft and sealed. That's a very quick and dirty primer. And just a very quick hearing or looking about these cards, right? It is 100% going to be the way that you're going to be getting into Flesh and Blood nowadays, is by draft and sealed. They help build your collection. They help your deck building prowess. They help you understand the game. They help expose you to more cards so you're not caught off guard. They help start putting that art to ability. It's not like it's like a mind muscle connection when you're working out. It's art to card ability, right? I oftentimes don't even read cards anymore. Once I've read them the first time, I just associate it with the art. I don't know if anyone else does that, but that's something I do. It's something that helps me specifically. So, back to the hero's journey portion of this, okay? Your first step is no longer going to be just getting the blitz decks or just getting down to the game store. It's going to be picking up packs, exploring, and drafting, okay? I'm going to be starting to put out more and more draft guides with my box openings. As I open boxes, I'll be going over what my picks would be, what my sealed packs should look like, all that kind of stuff. So be on the lookout on the YouTube channel for videos regarding that to be companion videos to these podcasts, right? I'm not just going to do random videos on I'm not just going to do random videos on weird topics. I want them to be purposeful and to tie into the podcast somehow. So with that said, we want to go on to how do you expand your collection? Like I said, it's sealed and draft. So little by little, you're going to keep picking up packs here and there. You can start trading. I haven't traded cards in such a long time in Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, or anything else. But in Flesh and Blood, I've been trading. We get to the pre-release. Some people have their eye on a certain hero. I'm just there to play the game. I'm just there to win. So I'm very open to trade whatever for whatever cards I think I'm going to need for whatever deck I have, whatever restrictions I've set on myself, etc. But the social feel of this game is so much better. I can't describe it better than every single week I go to my local game store. I don't see any Magic players. I don't see any Yu-Gi-Oh players. I don't see... God, I haven't seen any One Piece players at my local game store, but they are out there. But every single week we have Flesh and Blood people showing up. Every single week. The spirit of this game is very much so in the Flesh and Blood. It's very much so alive. So continuing on with my end of year look at the game and what we've learned, our little the old down and dirty look at it is it has grown, it has waned, it has waxed, all that. It's just like every other game. It has its ebbs and flows. The tides come in and out on it. Right now, we're kind of on a hard out because it's the holidays and people are just busy and have already spent all their money on everything else. But once that tide starts to flow back in, I just get that joy of competition that only Flesh and Blood can really give. So now that you've learned what I now think is going to be the way forward, because I guess to explain that further is the protection value of this is you're not going to buy a Blitz deck and you're not going to have a bunch of banned stuff. You're not going to buy some product that says it's ready to go right out the case and it's just not. With draft, you are going to play that day with those cards and you're going to get points, you're going to get rewards, you're going to get packs, you're going to get experience, you're going to make new friends. All of that comes with draft and sealed. Eventually, you will have enough cards to build a CC deck, or you'll get cards that help you trade into it. Whatever happens, happens. You're going to grow into this community and game. Just got to stick with it. And that brings us to the next point, reviewing Flesh and Blood this year. 2023, my first full year, because before this it was Monarch was my first game or first set. And man, jumping in halfway was great, but having experienced a full year of Flesh and Blood, callings, nationals, the whole adventure, it is definitely in its best interest to chill out on the competition a little bit and try to get some of the competitive edge smoothed out so that more players feel like it's more accessible. Because as I said, I've taught many people now how to play the game, but they never fully commit to coming and playing at their LGS. There's something about the game that's just intimidating. At first it was money. Then it's I don't know how to play the game, and it's I don't need another collection. This is all true. This is all true. Nobody needs 4 card games in their life. But I very much so think it's worth everybody's time if you value a good competitive game that lets you see every card and make impactful decisions and interact every turn no matter what. I think Flesh and Blood is very much so worth your time, 100%. I have full faith in this game now. I've just burned off most of my Magic collection. And in order to buy a bunch of sealed Flesh and Blood, not even just to invest, I'm going to be opening it on this channel as we go on. Podcasts won't be doing box openings for obvious reasons, but the podcast is more about talking about ideas of the game. Just now we talked about how I believe draft is the best way to go, and I kind of went over a primer on how to draft. Of course, you couldn't visually see it if you're listening to this, but I went slow and I talked more about the idea of just separating your cards. Find out what's not being picked. Find out what's not there. Use the process of elimination. Use your brain. That's the best part of this game is when you win, it's like Dark Souls. It makes you feel smart. It just makes you feel better for having won the game. Right? So how does it help you find a hero? How does it help you start your hero's journey if you want to be a main, if you want to be one of those guys? It's natural. As you draft, as you sealed, as you explore more cards, you're going to find out what you don't like, and you're going to be able to narrow it down even faster. You'll be able to trade those cards for the more valuable cards to you, because this game doesn't have the player base yet to make every card 100% valuable, but it comes and goes in waves with who's popular at the time. Because we have such a small... It's not small, right? But it's smaller than Magic for sure. It's smaller than Pokemon for sure. I'd say One Piece is about the same size, probably. I know I have my own reservations about One Piece. The anime was obviously fine. The real action is fine, but Konami does weird things when games go on for too long. All right? They just do. So the only other portion of this podcast that I really want to discuss on draft and sealed is practice makes perfect. Today, we just did a sealed at my local game store because we were kind of burnt on Classic Constructed. So we did a sealed and we checked it out. And one of our newer players dove into Icelander for some reason. We did an Uprising sealed. And I warned him against it because it was one of the more complicated heroes that you could choose. But this person will not be deterred. They want to explore the game, just like I'm advising you to do. It's actually kind of where I'm getting the idea from is I'm watching this new player go through the adventure. And the Classic Constructed is an absolute gauntlet. They're going through people like it makes me sound like I have a high opinion of myself. I kind of don't. Kind of. But they're playing me every week. They're playing a few of our judges every week with Classic Constructed decks. And we talk in the Discord constantly. We're playing games over Tabletop Simulator constantly. We're constantly... Can't stop saying that word. Very frequently we play to compete, to get better, to prepare for bigger events. We're not even sure all who qualified or who's able to go, but we're all planning on hitting up LA for either the calling or whatever side events to try to compete. That's just what we do. So it's kind of a slog for our newer player to play Classic Constructed. Yes, they finally got a collection large enough through playing sealed and draft to pick a hero and to kind of stick with them for a little bit, but they didn't really have the lessons in order to fill that. They didn't have the furniture to fill the house, so to speak. They could obviously play it, but they weren't making very sound decisions, and that's because, yeah, you can build whatever deck you want, but you're not gonna be practiced with it. In previous episodes and multiple other episodes of this podcast, I really stress you goddamn need to practice. I had one friend get very irritated with me. They don't hang out with me as much anymore. They don't have the time for games, but they told me to stop preaching about practice, and I'm like, no, dude, you don't understand. Enough practice will get you so much farther than just the top tier deck. As evident by Fi should not have made it through that many Lexis. Fi should not have made it through that many Icelanders during my RTN, but I did, and my final opponent was a favorable matchup in Azuri, right? So it was the practice that I had put in that let me know how to play against those decks, even though they were unfavorable matchups. My opponents didn't practice as much, or they would have stomped me in, because those should be more like 40-60 matches. Practice, practice, practice. Practice does make perfect in this game. If you know the events, you know the cards, you know the lines, you know the heroes, if you know the whole roster against your deck, you can turn some of the 70-30 matchups into 50-50s, because if your opponent's just picking up the most popular deck and just kind of going for it, they're not gonna have the legs to stand on that you do. You're just gonna be a stronger player, right? And with that, with the idea and lessons of you need to be drafting, you need to be playing sealed, that helps you build your collection, it exposes you to more cards, it lets you see more of the game, feel more of the game. And now we know that practicing, once you do hone it down to your favorite parts of the game, practice is really what you're going to need to drill in. How do you deal with all of the losses? And I mean all of the losses. When I first started playing card games, I probably didn't win my first event for 3 years. Nowadays, I jumped into Flesh and Blood and won my first event in 2 months. It just comes with time. It's a language of the game. You just know what to look for. Okay? How did I get there? Through those years of losses. I know what to look for. I know, what am I doing? You need to start to identify, am I pitch stacking correctly? Am I playing my defense as best I can? Am I attacking effectively? Am I reading my opponent's plays well enough? There's something you're doing wrong. And if any of you have played StarCraft, I relate this game a lot to that. Not in the same kind of, I'm going to play a huge wide eco game, but it's more of a, you can always look at the replay through your head. You can talk to your opponent at the end of the game, and you can figure out why you lost pretty well. And you can start working on noticing that in the future so you don't lose to that exact thing again. And that's just you slowly sharpening, slowly guiding, and getting better and better and better at this game. Every single loss needs to be a lesson. Don't just throw up your hands and go, oh my God, it sucks so much dick that you just scrubbed out nationals and come here to ruin us in the calling. No, you don't say that shit. You get over it. You find out what you lost to, how you lost, why you lost, when you lost, all of it. As anyone who's played with me will tell you, my biggest suggestion is get a goddamn composition notebook and start writing down why you lost. Write down what cards felt bad, write down what cards felt good, and that's when you can start tweaking and tuning your whole play style and deck to you. All of this is going to come through draft and sealed naturally. The more you play draft, the more you play sealed, the more you're going to find out what cards work for what cards work in certain synergistic ways. What are the bombs? What do you need to avoid for certain heroes? Are you pigeonholing yourself, you know? I wanted like hell during Nationals to try to push Chain because I knew Chain in the Monarch draft was sick. But because I had gone through so much draft in my life, I now know that I should not force what I want. I saw Leviah open up. I went Leviah. I got like a perfect deck for that. Still didn't win. Still didn't get into day 2, but draws are draws. And at the end of the day, this is a card game. So after you've gotten so good at draft, sealed, everything else, take it all with a grain of salt, okay? Take your lickings, take your whatever the fuck. Whenever you lose, sometimes variance will just be the loss. But with Flesh and Blood, it is so less often the case that variance is the reason you lose, right? You just have to make the best play every single time, and if your opponent slips up, take advantage. It's just like, it's a perfect parallel to fighting games. If I were as good as I used to be in Street Fighter, I would definitely try to relate it to that better. But I was not the biggest fan of Street Fighter 5, so I just kind of fell off. I might jump back into Mortal Kombat 1, who knows. Off topic, point being, we've gone over the new method, the new approach to how you're going to start your journey. This year, 2024, make this the year you jump into Flesh and Blood. Share this podcast around, share this episode around, share this everywhere to anyone you know who plays a card game. If you want them to play Flesh and Blood, do something about it. Every week I talk to a few of the people that I've taught how to play, and they still want to play, and they still play a game or so with me at work or wherever the hell I meet them, but they still haven't quite had the nerve to show up. One didn't wake up today, and I get that because we're graveyard shifters, but you can definitely always push. Don't be pushy, but you can push to have them play the game, right? So where you start your hero's journey is at draft, sealed, practicing, honing, get filed down straight to the edge. You know exactly where you're going to be in the game. You know what your style is. You know what your play style is. You know what you want to do. Once you find what you want to do, you find the hero you're after. Practice makes perfect. Play every single event and chance you get with that hero. Still draft, obviously. Draft the new sets. Because like I said earlier in the episode, it scales with you. Right? You're never going to go to a big event. If you make it Nationals, you make it to Pro Tour, you're going to be drafting. That's just how it is. You're going to be drafting. I've yet to see a big event without a draft in it. The only events that don't are like callings, and even then, side events are draft, and they offer big prizes. You want the best shot at those, don't you? Get drafting. We now know that wins are great, but losses are better. Winning's easy, right? You sit there, you go, man, I must have played so cool. I have a massive ability. And it's just easy. But losses, you have to sit there and get yourself back up.
Why do we fought?
That's really what's going to separate some of the worst players from the best players is what did you learn from the end of the game? Were you able to take anything away at all? Or was it just luck? I really want people to share this episode, obviously for my own benefit. Very transparently, I am running an online store. I'm running a podcast, all that stuff. But there's a reason for it. As I've previously stated in other episodes, I never made a podcast for Magic, but I went to Grand Prix, Pro Tours. Like, I went to everything for that. Never made a podcast for it. Never even thought about making content. With this game, I'm thinking about making a website and doing articles. Like, this game is the future, for sure, for competitive gaming, card gaming. I hope it's the future for collectible card gaming. I hope it's everything you need in that old school, classic, just vintage feeling, but at the same time updated and modern in the way that you're not relying on outdated mechanics, right? I just hope it's your everything. I hope it's your everything you need in a card game, right? That's going to be kind of it for how to start your journey. But what comes next after the hero's journey has already begun, right? What comes next? Well, we'll just have to figure that out next time on Cast a Commotion, because this one is zeroed.